So, today we're going to look at the 4 treasures of Chinese brush painting. Perhaps you've been given a gift set of Chinese brush painting materials that you want to try out. Well, today you're going to learn a little bit about how they all are used. That's one example of a gift box. This is another one you might have been given or seen. This one contains the ink stone, the ink stick and a brush. The other one of the 4 treasures is the paper. Let's start by looking at the ink itself. You will need an ink stone to prepare your ink. They come in various sizes and shapes. Some are beautifully carved with dragons. There's 3 examples here. I prefer to use this rectangular one, but whichever sort you've got when you start is fine. So it's a sort of a slate-like stone, very smooth here, and we use that to prepare the ink. The ink comes in the form of a stick, and again there's various examples here. The more you pay for the stick, the better quality it will be. These are quite nice ones. You can see they come in a silk box. If it's in a cheaper box and it's cheaper, then it's probably a lesser quality stick. It will still be suitable for a beginner, but as you advance you might want to invest in a better one. So let's have a look at how that works. I'm going to put a few drops of water onto the ink stone. And then we take the stick and we prepare the ink by grinding on the stone into the water. And you can see that quite quickly I get some nice black ink. Once that's thickened up, you'll see that the water looks dry on the stone, and that's when you won't get any more ink to dissolve into the water. That's the point when you add some more water to your mix and repeat the process. Now it's very important that you don't handle your ink stick with wet fingers. If you get the ink stick wet, that will ultimately cause it to crack. As you can see, this one has done here. It has broken up and cracked. And that damage is caused because the ink stone has got wet. Sorry, the ink stick has got wet. So you always want to make sure that you handle your ink stick with dry hands and that you don't get water on it. If you do, dry it off with your paper tissue straight away. So you can see now I've got a nice puddle of thick ink there. So I'm going to scrape that down to the ink well part of the stone. Now what most people find is that it takes quite a long time to make enough ink to do your work. So to make it a bit quicker, to speed the process up, we also use bottled ink. And again, this comes in various brands. I've got one there. And this one here is one that I often use. and these can be added to that mix. So I'm putting a little bit of that ink onto the stone. And adding some water to that. And then I'm going to blend that and mix it through with some more ink from the stick. Now you might ask, why not just use it from the bottle? Well, there's several reasons for that. For a start, the bottle ink is as it comes. You can't make it any thicker, and really to paint well you need to have a very thick ink, so it's a good idea to thicken it up with the ink stick. Also, when you come to finish your work and you want to present it in a frame, you'll need to re-wet it to mount it. And during the re-wetting process, if you have only used bottled ink, it may run when you re-wet it. So it really is a good idea to put a little bit of the ground ink in with your bottled ink. So I'm going to scrape that down to the well there now, and I have got a good puddle of ink prepared. Blot that off on your towel so that it doesn't get left damp and therefore liable to crack, and put it back in its little box. Now, if you have some ink left at the end of your painting session, please do not put it back into the bottle, because this will go off. This ink will go off and you'll find that it will spoil the whole bottle of ink. It's best to wash your ink stone away and clean it away at the end of each painting day. And when you clean it, just clean it with a very soft cloth. Do not scrub it with a Brillo pad, because the abrasive action will damage this nice soft smooth surface, which should always be smooth. So let's put that ink to one side and have a look at the brushes. Now, brushes, again, they come in all different shapes and sizes and different hairs, and there's a great variety in how they will perform. But when you buy your brush, you will find that it comes with a plastic cover on it, and inside, when you take that off, the brush is hard. This is because all of the hairs have been coated in glue to preserve them until they're ready to be used. So the first thing you need to do with that brush is soak it in water to remove that excess glue that's preserving it until it's ready to use. So we take our brush and we soak it in just a very small amount of water. You do not want to soak the wooden part of the brush here, as this will cause the brush to eventually fall apart. You only want to soak the hairs. So we pop that into a little jam jar with just a tiny bit of water and let it soak. It'll only take maybe 10-15 minutes to soak those hairs free from the glue, so that the brush is ready for use. So once the brush has been soaked and the hairs are free, it will look like this. some people say, well, this isn't a very good brush, it's not got a point on it. But as soon as we wet that brush, you'll see that it will come back to that lovely point. Now the brushes come in two basic types. There's a light-haired one, which we sometimes call the sheep brush, and a dark-haired one, which is sometimes referred to as a wolf brush. The light-haired ones are lovely to use for colour work, and the dark-haired ones are really good for drawing with the ink. But a lot of brushes are also what we call mixed hair, where they have a darker out core and an inner light core. So they're dark hairs on the outside and light hairs on the inside, and they are obviously dual purpose. So the brushes, to take care of them, never soak them, especially not here. Never leave them in a pot upright like that when they're wet, because any moisture in the hairs will come down into the part of the bamboo part of the brush, and the brush will be damaged and could ultimately fall apart. So when your brush is not in use, rinse the ink from it straight away, bring it to a nice point by rolling it gently on an absorbent piece of paper, and leave it to dry flat. That way the wooden part of the brush is protected from any damage from the moisture here. So to start off Chinese brush painting, all you really need is at least one or two brushes in what I would call a medium size, and that's what I would call a medium sized brush. The paper comes in a roll and is called Xuan. That's spelled X-U-A-N, but we pronounce it Xuan. In this country we usually call it rice paper, but it's not edible. It's not the type of paper you can eat. It's made of plant fibre, and this one that I'm going to use today is called unsized Xuan. That means it doesn't have a glue coating, so it's quite an absorbent paper. I'll show you a sheet of that here that's been cut from the roll, and you can see it's a very thin, almost tissue paper. It does have a right and a wrong side. If you feel it, the surface of it with your fingertips, you'll feel that one side is a little bit smoother to the touch than the other, and you want to paint on the smooth side, the smoothest of the two. If you hold it to the light and tilt it at an angle, you'll often see little minor bumps in the paper as well, and they'll be the ones that you put on the underside and work on that smooth side. So we have our paper and our ink and our brush prepared. Now, in order to use them, I'm going to saturate that brush with the ink and then wipe it on the side of the stone so that it's full of ink but not dripping. So when I hold it up, the ink doesn't drip off, but the whole brush is nicely full of ink. And I'm going to start by showing you the character or the word for dragon. It helps to have a weight at the top of your paper so that you can put a slight pressure on it with your fingers at the bottom to get a little bit of tension across the paper, and that will help you to feel the surface. To hold the brush, we use 2 fingers behind, 2 in front, and then bring the thumb in to lightly grip the brush. The Chinese say you should be able to hold an egg in the palm of your hand. So it's not a tense grip. The fingers are relaxed so that I can lightly grip the brush and manoeuvre it as I need to. You'll also need to remember that you want to keep your arm lifted. So I'm not resting my arm on the table when I work. My arm is lifted off the table so that I can move the brush freely in any direction. The grip that I've shown you will feel very awkward and unnatural at first, but in order to use the Chinese brush painting style, it's really important to work right from the word go with this grip, as it's really important to use that to get the style to work. If you use a Western grip, you will not get the correct brush work that you will need to use. So although it does feel very awkward, keep persevering with that special grip. So we've got 2 fingers behind the brush, 2 in front of the brush, and the thumb there keeping it secure. So I've loaded the brush with lots of ink. Let's have a go at writing that word dragon. You'll see that as I use the brush, it remains upright. So I press and lift the brush in order to make different shapes with the brush. See here, I'm pressing and pressing and lift. Pressing, pressing and lift. But it remains upright throughout. As a beginner, it's not really important to get all these exact shapes. What is important is that you're learning to move the brush in this upright grip. Having done that, we need to rinse the brush with plenty of water. So that none of that ink is left in there. Otherwise it will set hard and ruin the brush. So I rinse the brush out really well, and I usually work with at least 2 if not 3 jars of water, because as you can see, the ink is a very strong pigment and quickly darkens the water. Then I wipe the brush And you can see how much ink is still in there. So I would then use a second jar of water just to get it finally clean and lay it flat to dry. My ink stone, I would tip the ink away and gently wash away the ink with cold water and a soft cloth. My writing will dry quite quickly and it will soon be ready to take home. You'll see that I've got a piece of paper underneath this, and this is because the paper is so thin that the ink will go right through that paper straight away. So you always need to have something underneath that's absorbent. I've put a piece of newsprint paper here, but a piece of whitish or light coloured felt is ideal, or a cloth or a blanket in a light colour that's you can use to have underneath your paper to absorb that ink as it goes into the paper. So there we are. We've had a look at the 4 treasures of Chinese brush painting today: the ink stone, the brush and the paper.